What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of the Do It for a Living podcast. I'm Kevin Dubois. It's been about 4 years since we last did this, and it does feel great to finally get back into it. I've been thinking long and hard over the last couple of years of different episodes we could do and how to get this thing rolling again. And so we're back with another episode today. This one is going to be with Matt Beenen, but before we get started, I want to go over some stuff to kind of like get everybody back into the podcast. So, again, thanks everyone for listening. The previous, season of this show had a lot of downloads, lots of listeners, and we got tons of feedback. It was excellent. And the one problem I really had with it was it takes a lot of time, right? So organizing a podcast, finding a guest, arranging time to do the interview, editing the podcast, all this stuff takes a lot of time, and I really felt like some of the content got stale. We were just kind of doing the same format over and over, and I really want to do something different. And that is what I've been thinking long and hard about for the last couple of years about what kind of content we can do this time. I still do want to have the interviewing with getting a person's background, their history, their story, essentially. But we also want to do follow-ups. So hearing from those people again, seeing how things have changed for them. And there's other topics that I want to do as well, such as like learning about work-life balance problems that people have. You know, maybe pivoting your shop focus, like going from an installation shop to a manufacturer. Maybe you want to start a business from scratch. That's something we can cover. Buying and selling a business is something I actually want to talk about because that's something I'm going to deal with soon. And there's other more political topics such as like the EPA, motorsports with that, politics in motorsports, electric vehicles. This is all kinds of content that I've loved to talk about, and this is a great channel for us to be able to do it with. We also want to keep this podcast ad-free, so instead of promoting outside brands, we're going to share a bit about My Shop Assist. It's designed to help shop owners streamline project management, improve efficiency, and grow their business. We'll introduce you to some of My Shop Assist features as they naturally fit into our discussions, so no ads. It's just going to be talking about our tool to help you succeed as a performance shop, and whether it be a restoration shop, race shop, fabrication, engine building, transmissions, car stereos. It works for basically all of it, anything that's service-based like that. And we are going to also use our existing customers as guests. So we do meet a lot of really amazing shops and shop owners, and I want to let them share their story and talk about their business and what they do, and then also how they apply the software to grow their business. So that's something we're going to cover in every episode rather than doing an ad. We're just going to roll that into the discussion. And then the other thing we've got is, since I own Evolution Dynamics, we're going to be applying the concepts we're learning through this podcast directly into the shop. I really want to sell the shop, so that's something I've been thinking about long and hard lately because I want to grow the software company. I want to grow My Shop Assist, and running both of them is quite difficult, mostly because a shop is very hands-on. It requires a lot of actual work. I do most of the tuning myself. Richard does the Evo 10 tuning. I do all the engine building. Most of the mechanic work I do, we do have part-time help with that, but it's a small shop. It's very small. It's definitely a owner-operator business, and I need to get out of that role, and I need to put myself more into managing and growing the software company. And so what we are going to do is we are going to take the concepts we learn in this podcast, apply it to the shop. We're going to discuss it. We're going to talk about it. Richard will be on, and we are going to apply that stuff and learn how it changes. Whether it's good or bad, we're going to talk about it, and hopefully that helps other people who will run shops kind of learn the processes that we're going to go through to make this happen. And I think this is all going to be really beneficial. If you want to get in touch with us, I want to hear what you want to learn about. If there's somebody you want us to talk to, if there's somebody you want us to hear from again, any of that sort of stuff, please let us know. DoItForALivingPodcast.com is our website. I actually got the URL back, doitforaliving.com and doitforaliving.net. So we lost those on a stupid error a number of years ago, but we got them back now because they just went back to the open domain name registry. So yeah, this next episode is with Matt Beenen. Why don't you go ahead and listen to it and let us know how you feel, and make sure you subscribe again, because obviously it's been a while, so everybody's subscriptions are going to be expired on, at least on Apple. But yeah, let us know what you think and stay in touch. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. It's been a long time since we last got doing this. And when we left off, we did do a fairly... one of the last-ish episodes we did was with Matt Beenen, is who we have here today as well. I follow Matt on Facebook, and again, if you've listened to... We've interviewed him twice before, so if you listened to those before, you know that... he is active in SEMA. He used to work for Grimspeed. He started his own company, which was the second interview we did with him. And it's been 5 years, and following you in Facebook and also through like the forums and whatever it may be, his company has absolutely exploded, and he's given us the opportunity to interview him again, and I think this is great, and I really want to hear what he has done with it over the past 5 years, particularly because we asked those questions in the interviews. Last time we were doing this, we asked, like, what were your plans moving forward, and so now we actually get to answer those questions. And so, Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to come back and reflect a little bit on the last 5 years. It's a nice chance to look back versus forward. I probably said something like that before, but it's great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, let's just get right into it. Like, tell us what you have been doing, like just an overview over the last, and so just so we're clear, the last time we did this interview was January of 2020. And so we're, end of October 2024. So we're getting close to 5 years ago. So give us an overview of how things have gone for you.
Yeah, man. So 5 years ago, when we were talking last, I think I moved the business from Minnesota to Connecticut, Builtright, that is. And I think I had one full-time employee in addition to myself. Mm-hmm. And that felt like a huge step out of my basement and the garage. And it was, but in the time since then, I think what I was anticipating would happen is that our growth would slow down. Because I think my experience has been that at each point in this journey, I kind of feel like it can't possibly get sort of like crazier than this. And I continue to prove that wrong. So for better or for worse, we've grown pretty significantly. When we talked, we were in a 3,900 square foot little industrial condo. A couple of years ago, we bought property and built a brand new facility on it, about 35,000 square feet of manufacturing, distribution, office space, that kind of thing. We've released and introduced a whole host of new products, some in our existing product categories, some in new product categories, probably another 150 new products or so. And I've really built out an awesome team. So I remember when you and I spoke, I had aspirations to have a great leadership team. I know that that's a part of growing a robust, successful company. And I've got an awesome leadership team and just team in general. And we're very, very organized with how we spend our time and resources. So that has definitely been one of the bigger changes since we last talked is the level of intentionality behind the business.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I listened to the interview right before we did this interview, and you talked about that specifically in your 5-year plan was to add a leadership team, and it sounds like you just did that.
Yeah, it's definitely a process, and we've had people come and go, but we've gotten, again, really intentional. We know very clearly what it looks like to have like the right person in the business versus the wrong person. We have clear core values and stuff. And then we've got tools that help us make sure that person is in the right seat, doing the right work. And man, when that's happening, it's like, it's unbelievable what we can accomplish, rowing in the same direction, so to speak. So yeah. So grateful for the people that we have on board now.
Okay, and one thing you did was you started with Builtright, and again, going back to the last interview, you said you were going to start other essentially brands, and so you have now what's called Mountech. Explain what that is and what's different about it and how you got that going.
Yeah, so Builtright, the kind of the niche or the corner that Builtright carved out for itself is that we're experts in mounting things to trucks and SUVs, gear storage, gear organization, that sort of thing. But in addition to that, we have other attachments and other opportunities that are in a similar lane. But my concern was that some of these products and inventions would get lost if we buried them, so to speak, in a truck accessory brand, which is what Builtright is, truck and SUV accessories. Mm-hmm. And so what Mountech started as is, we make these dash mounts that fit into the dash of a truck or an SUV. They're make model specific. And most of our customers are going off and buying attachments, device holders, ball and socket arm type system, whether it's Amazon or Ram mounts is a popular one. Mm-hmm. We were reselling Ram mounts. And we were doing enough volume in that and with the dash mounts to get a lot of feedback from customers, and began to understand that there was a gap in the market for these device holders where Ram mounts is a really great commercial industrial solution. They're not particularly pretty. And there was some from an engineering standpoint, some weaknesses, but they've got utility patents and the product hadn't changed. And I think Ram is a pretty big business. And then the other option is that there are a lot of imported products that have a bunch of little pieces that are glued together or whatever. And it's like a carbon fiber tube or something, they look kind of neat, but they don't have that same commercial industrial function. And so there was a space in between, and so Mountech is our take on that type of a system. We've innovated in a couple of ways, and then, all the parts are CNC machined. It's a higher end product, mm-hmm. But these are parts that you're not bolting them to a forklift in a warehouse. You're bolting them to the dash of your, $80,000 pickup truck. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of nice to look at too. So that was kind of what started Mountech, is we didn't want those. And so those have an application in aviation, marine, defense. And we get inbound inquiries from those channels already with Mountech. So we just didn't want to lose that in the truck accessory brand. Now what Mountech has grown to is that is the business, that is the brand where we're putting other similar products that we don't want to get pigeonholed in there. So there's a couple of other things that we've done there with Mountech as well.
Okay, so it sounds like you have basically taken a product you already made and then kind of spun it off along with some combination of OPP, other people's parts, and then just refined some of those to make your own products better. Is that kind of how it goes?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was when other people make a product that is complementary to ours, whether it's with our dash mounts in this case or the bedside racks, we love to try and bring those on and sell them.
Gotcha.
And we get and give a lot of feedback. And in the case of Ram, we were giving a lot of feedback, and we just felt like suddenly we're not offering our customers the best possible solution. Okay. And in a way, it forced our hand there.
Interesting. And then, with it being a separate brand, does that help you with selling the product? If it's coming from the same warehouse, essentially, if you're still distributing from your new building, does that make it easier or harder?
Yeah, operationally, and we can get into that. We are operationally mature enough that it doesn't matter. It all flows really smoothly. Okay. From a sales perspective, I think if we had called it a Builtright product, we would do more sales near term. Because Builtright is a bigger, more well-established brand than Mountech. But we're patient. We're taking our time to get the product right. And I know that longer term, I think Mountech really has a lot of opportunity. And so that is the reason we split them out. But yeah, as far as taking orders and combining products and stuff, on the back end, we have all that sorted out so well that it doesn't really matter.
Okay. And then that's something we talked about in the last interview was what you were using to manage the business. So at the time it was QuickBooks, it sounded like manufacturing or enterprise. And where have you gone with that? And I know you said we're going to look for something more specific to manufacturing.
Yes. Yeah. And we basically did exactly that. So we outgrew QuickBooks, their ability to kind of manage inventory and manufacturing. Right now we're using Fishbowl, which integrates really nicely with, Shopify, Amazon, different sales channels, different shipping integrations, that sort of stuff. So we're using Fishbowl with QuickBooks Online now, and it's working pretty well. I do think that there probably is another version in the future where we outgrow that. Mm-hmm. But for right now, it's working very well for us.
Interesting. And that's something that I know IAG has always used was Fishbowl. And they've spoken, I don't know if it's like super highly of it, but I think it accomplishes what they needed. And I don't know if that's where you got the idea from, but that's something we discuss usually in the Do It for a Living community quite often is like, what are you doing for manufacturing software, right? Like that's an interesting one that there's a lot of different takes on how to do things, and it sounds like you've worked it out for the better then.
Yeah, if you're really doing your research and you're using like a tech stack that is like this Shopify, we use ShipStation, it kind of all roads lead to Fishbowl right now. I don't know that I know anybody that speaks really highly of their, ERP, MRP, but it does the job. It definitely, I couldn't imagine living without it or a similar solution now. Okay.
And now you have this big 35,000 square foot building. Have you shifted some of your manufacturing in-house? I mean, or is it strictly storage?
Yes. Yeah, we have. That was part of the justification for the building was to have the space to build more kind of internal manufacturing infrastructure. So we do some manufacturing in-house. We've got a big fiber laser. We're waiting on a new press brake actually in a couple of weeks. It's part of that too is not just we want to be able to manufacture our own stuff because we got some really excellent local manufacturing partners. But as a business is growing really quickly, cash flow management becomes a real challenge. Yeah, just in terms of keeping the right stuff on the shelf fast enough. Mm-hmm. And so with internal manufacturing, we can remain agile from an inventory standpoint.
Okay. How do you decide like what products to make in-house versus outsource? Because everything was outsourced before except for like a few things that you were like hand sewing and right? Isn't that how it went?
Yeah, totally. Really, it's not even a matter of like my goal for the business, and we're not quite there yet, but I anticipate we will be in the next year or year and a half, is that we have the capability of making every Builtright product or Mountech product in-house. Okay. Possibly with the exception of injection molded parts. And so really it's not a matter of, well, we'll make this in-house and we'll outsource this. It's a matter of, if we only need 250 of something versus 1,000 of something or 10,000 of something, maybe that's something where we do it in-house. Okay. And we'll let, numbers and data and costs drive those decisions.
Are most of your subcontractors U.S. based, or you have stuff made overseas?
Oh, yeah. We I think like most people source some like hardware and stuff overseas. There are some items you just really can't get or be competitive with in the U.S. But yeah, like all Builtright products are made in the USA.
Okay, so the I guess to say the actual products are made in the U.S., but like hardware, nuts, bolts, like miscellaneous, like little things still overseas, in which probably all of it is made overseas anyway for every product.
Right. Yeah. Really, whenever possible. I mean, we see ourselves as, an American manufacturing brand and business. There are some things where, your options are to take them overseas or to not offer them as a product at all. Yep. There are cases like that. As volume grows, we end up in that position less and less frequently, but yeah, I mean, it's 99% made in the USA. And partially, fundamentally, we like that. It's more fun that way too. We like making stuff. We like getting our hands on stuff. Yeah. So,
where is your building located, or where are you located at?
We're in New Milford, Connecticut. So about 10 minutes north of Danbury, Connecticut, and 90 minutes north of Manhattan.
Okay, so you have a lot of resources near you, then, essentially.
Yeah, one of the challenges, and this is part of what drove us to bring some manufacturing in-house too, is there's a solid manufacturing environment out here, but there's also a lot of defense. What that means is there's a lot of very high quality manufacturers that are used to getting very, very high prices. So it's much different than it was in the Midwest. Okay, for sure.
Yeah, that's always a struggle. Is like if you put your location somewhere really cheap, you're nowhere near anything that you really need to operate a business. So like we're in Dallas. I mean, I could literally do anything here. There's everything you could possibly imagine within maybe 30 minutes. which makes it very easy to develop and make a product, and get it manufactured and get it distributed because it's all here. And so, because you have moved to put that where you're at, right? Like you were like Midwest somewhere, Wisconsin or Minnesota or something, right?
Yeah, we were in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Yep. Okay.
And then now, how are you selling this product? You had just gotten signed in with Turn 14 in the last interview, I think. And I know you disliked Amazon and actually stopped selling through Amazon. What are you doing now? And I know there was a pretty major, wholesaler sign on that you had fairly recently.
Yeah, so I'll kind of starting with direct. We do still do a lot of direct sales through builtrightind.com. One of our core values is owning the customer journey. And so for us, what that means is that from the moment a person hears about Builtright to the moment they're telling their friend about Builtright, we want to have kind of control and be able to cater that whole experience. And quite frankly, that's much easier to do direct. So that is why I started the business the way that I did. And we've been primarily direct to this point. I think when we talked last, like you said, we had onboarded with Turn 14. And then more recently, we've onboarded with Keystone and also AAM. So we're reaching a bunch of these kind of like regional distributors. Mm-hmm. The realization that we've had, and we've served hundreds of thousands of customers now, is there are a lot of our customers that, of course, they have the tools to install our products, but their idea like of a fun Saturday is not spending it in the garage working on their truck. Sure. They're at their kid's soccer game or whatever. So they want to be able to take their truck to they want to buy their truck. They want to be able to take it to their local shop and have those guys do a spray and bed liner, a tonneau cover, their floor mats and their Builtright organizational gear. Yeah. So we're working really hard in the last year or so. And I brought on Jared Suki as our director of sales, and he's out in Orange, California, to really grow that distribution network. So I think that what I have seen in the last, 10 years is this strong move towards direct. And we're seeing a lot of like legacy manufacturers working really hard to build out a direct sales channel. I actually think, and I still believe in that as an overall trend, but I think actually there's going to be a little bit of movement back towards, people want to go get their hands on product and feel it and see it and talk to somebody face to face about it. Mm-hmm. A little bit more analog. And so we're banking on that a little bit, and we're already kind of seeing some exciting results there.
Okay. And by that, do you mean like retailers? So rather than going through a wholesaler, retailer buying direct from you, or is that buying through the wholesalers?
Yeah. So we do have some direct relationships with some of those dealers and installers. We actually like them to go through distribution because the whole idea is for them to have really fast access to the product. And we don't ever plan to be able to do that as well as
way easier. It's way easier if you're selling retail, it can't be that much harder to sell to a shop, right? Like you already have the shipping infrastructure built in, right?
Oh yeah. And like if a direct dealer calls us today and needs a set of bedside racks for a Super Duty, we've got it out the door in a few hours. Okay. And depending on their chosen carrier and shipping method, it's pretty fast. But, Keystone could have it to you this afternoon. Right. So, and we believe that is part of that experience for people is to have it available. So, that's exciting. We're excited to go to SEMA. By the time people have listened to this, probably have been to SEMA, and build those relationships. So
how many products do you actually have? And do all the wholesalers stock everything?
Yes, we've got about 260 something SKUs, I think, right now.
Okay.
And they stock most of them. Some of the make model stuff, even for us, is like for us a slow mover.
Okay.
And in those cases, we'll drop ship for them if it's needed.
Okay. So generalized products sell a lot better than your very specific stuff, but at the same time, you have to sell a specific part to mount those racks into a bed, right? Or are they universal?
Yeah, no, they're make model specific. So it's fundamentally, it makes a lot of sense, right? If we have a bedside rack system or a seat back molly system, and it's make model specific, so that the fit and the finish is like OEM, and the installation is really easy. we might have 100 of those SKUs, but then the attachments for those and the pouches and the clamps and stuff like that, those are more universal in nature. Yeah. So that's kind of, so even when we talk about from an inventory standpoint, like A, B, and C movers, we will even sometimes look at them separately. We'll say, okay, what are the A, B, and C movers for vehicle specific product versus what are A, B, and C movers for like a product that's more universal in nature. Otherwise, you're sort of polluting that data because they don't have an equal opportunity.
Sure, right. Or like you have to sell your A, which would be your like vehicle make model specific, in order to sell the universal products. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Exactly.
Okay. So the universal products, you sell a lot more of them because it's going with, one universal product can go with 3 different year make model products, right? So you're
or 30 or 300.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. And I'm just picked up on this. You said your director of sales is in California, so he is entirely remote.
Yep.
How is that working for you?
It's working really well. I think when we spoke, 4 or 5 years ago, it would not have worked well. But I wouldn't have even been comfortable with remote employees or team members at that time. But now I understand a couple of things. We've gotten really, really clear on our process and our systems internally and our meeting flow and how frequently we're meeting and what we're looking at during those meetings. We are very, very high on accountability. So I have no anxiety that, we're all busting our ass here in Connecticut and Jared's, snoozing away at his desk. So that is like just not even a consideration. But I'm also really liberal with having people come in and on site. So we have quarterly meetings, we have an annual meeting, we're meeting out at events. So, to the extent that it's possible, our remote team members, I think, they feel like they're really part of the team, which is important.
And he's sales staff, you said, right? Sales lead or manager.
Yep.
And so are you doing regions, or is he like the nationwide sort of sales director?
Yeah. So right now he's nationwide, and we even have some international dealers.
Okay.
But it is his right now. Basically, what I tasked him with, he's been with us for a little over a year now, is to build these relationships and build out that distribution channel. And so he's responsible for, our Keystone AAM relationships. He's bringing on dealers. And as that piece of our business grows, he'll build a sales team and to manage those relationships.
Awesome.
So,
okay. And so shifting gears here, I personally have a passion for, and people are going to hate me for this, I really like electric vehicles, like a lot. I take the engineering perspective of automotive much more so than like the, I guess what people call like a car guy, where you're just in love with old cars because they're pretty or they sound good. Like, I could really care less. I mean, a little, but I'm much more interested in the engineering behind the vehicles more so than the appearance of being a particular type of person. And so you got yourself a Rivian and a Cybertruck and an F-150 Lightning, right? I think you've had all 3 of them. And that's
I've actually not had a Lightning.
Oh, okay. But you have built products for them. I guess the Lightning is probably the same bed as an regular F-150, right? So
exactly, yeah, sure. Yep.
So tell us how that has worked out and how those markets are working for your products.
Yeah, it's interesting. Remind me to come back to Amazon, because I want to give an update on the Amazon thing at some point. But on the EV stuff, it's interesting. I think I'm similar to you, and maybe it's the engineer in me versus just a nostalgic car guy. And I got to be careful here because I don't want to make anybody mad, right? But I just like cool, interesting, unique stuff.
Uh-huh.
I'm not super loyal to one thing or another, whether it's a Subaru or a Tesla or a Raptor, I think that they're all just interesting and unique. And, to me, like when I look at a Rivian or a Cybertruck or a Raptor, like they're all just different types of trucks. Yeah. And it doesn't matter to me really, like what the details, I guess.
Right.
I daily drive a 24 Raptor, and I love the way it sounds and feels, and it's fun to drive.
A Raptor R,
I'll drive
or just a Raptor R? Come on,
no, not
come on, man.
Just a regular Raptor. Yeah, my attention span is too short to go and pay like some of these crazy markups. I would just get killed, year after year after year. But so if anybody's listening with an R like closer to MSRP, let's talk. But it's funny. I drive like the Tesla and I can the Cybertruck and I can read faces, and like understand the judgment that people pass. And it's like if you just knew that like yesterday I drove a Raptor and I've got like this Lotus Exige S, which is like the most pure car I can imagine. Like I'm just not super loyal to one thing or another. I think that they're great at some things and less great at others. And, I do have like the Rivian. I have like range anxiety on it. I got stuck a couple of times and, late to a birthday party or whatever, but they all have pros and cons. For us, as far as business goes, we've been pretty successful with it. I mean, certainly worthwhile. A little bit too soon to tell on the Cybertruck, but Rivian was a huge success. Okay. Cybertruck, I think, will be worthwhile for us. I can acknowledge that from a brand standpoint, we're sticking our necks out a little bit. Okay. Because obviously most of our customers are traditionally, they don't love the idea of an EV truck, and that's okay. One of our core values, our first core value, is to think big and be bold. And that's driven, I think, a lot of what you've seen in the last 5 years. Yeah. We use that to justify decisions like this. So, it's hard to consider yourself to be an innovative company and also ignore the innovative things that are going on in the industry just because you don't personally like them. Yeah. And so that's kind of the way that we've approached that.
Okay, so you're saying with at least with the Rivian so far, people are buying the product and using it. Then it's not people. I mean, I think people get the kind of idea that whoever buys an EV pickup truck is just using it to drive around town and like pick up their kids from soccer or whatever, right? But I mean, clearly, if you're selling product for it, people are using them for truck things, then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be careful with what I kind of give away here, and also understanding that like an early Rivian customer or an early Cybertruck customer, those people are generally like enthusiastic in nature. Okay. And so now if you're out like around where I live, you see people driving Rivian, it's like, well, that person's probably not a customer. But I mean, there were quarters where our Rivian products outsold, Ram products.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and I guess with the Cybertruck being, I mean, it's going on like what, maybe 10 months of manufacturing now where you can get them, and they've only got there's 30,000 of them out there, I think. So I see tons of them all the time here in Dallas. The dealership near me has got like 5 of them on their lot. Like they're all used, of course, but I see them all the time. It's just that kind of market is growing rapidly, and so I'm assuming you're going to start seeing a lot of products going in that direction as well. So,
yeah, and I think even like we'll see that at the SEMA show. Mm-hmm. SEMA is starting to embrace it, which I think is good. Again, I'm not really enthusiastic one way or another. I'm not saying it's the long term solution to all our problems, but it's what's happening in the industry, and I think ignoring it or pretending that it's not happening because I don't like it is just. That's one of the things I've learned about business in the last 15 years is to separate my own personal, to the extent that it's possible, separate my own personal judgments or even my own personal financial situation from business situations, business decisions, because oftentimes they're different, and if the two get too kind of clouded, the business becomes me, and that's not what I want it to be.
Right. Yeah, and I
that's
guess
a trap.
It doesn't. I know a lot of companies like to spin off their EV market as a different brand. And for you, that doesn't seem to make sense because the mounting part of it to the truck is unique to the type of the vehicle, but the rest of the products under Builtright are all still shared amongst all the vehicles, right? So it doesn't, in your case, it does not make sense to spin it off, right?
Yeah, we talked about it. We talked about it a lot. But yeah, I mean, a truck bed's a truck bed, and some of them look a lot different and some of them don't. And it just doesn't, what's under the hood just really doesn't impact our products. That didn't make a lot of sense for us to break it off.
Okay. And then next you're going to start making those little Japanese import mini truck beds, right? Or they get
it's funny. We have a guy. There's a guy down the street here that must import those. He's got like 30 of them on a lot, and they tempt me every day. Yeah,
I think
probably not.
I think they're awesome. Maybe totally useless because I think they're like 500cc, like super small engines can't like tow anything, and I mean, but I think they're really cool. So
yeah, if you just want something to like run to the hardware store or the gas station down the street, like I think that it would be fun.
Right, and my Tundra averages 13 mpg without anything in the bed, not towing anything, just driving around town. You know, I make machine shop runs, picking up tires, dropping off rims, whatever it may be. 13 mpg, which is horrendous, but it's a Tundra, so I guess everybody should know that by now. So
yes, yep.
All right, so what is something you use to determine like what products to make? Like, how are you figuring out what people are going to want? Are you going off like ideas that people give you, or are you just kind of out there always like brainstorming? How do you come up with new products? Yeah,
I think sort of like to step out a little bit further from where where you're going with the question is one of the things that I've learned since we talked last is the things that I'm good at, and also the things that I'm not good at. And then also separately from good and not good is like, what do I like? What do I enjoy? What gives me energy and what doesn't? And what I've figured out as I've been able to sort of delegate or unload some of these tasks that don't fit into what I'm good at, has helped bring that into focus. And so what I understand now that I'm good at is, that what I'm good at and what brings me kind of energy and excitement is coming up with new ideas. And so getting a new truck and just living with it and poking around and tinkering and prototyping and trying things out, that I think is kind of like my superpower. So I think part of the answer, the first part of the answer to your question is like instinct. And it's also kind of a handicap if you ask, my family or the people who have to tolerate me every day. So trying to figure out how to focus that without allowing it to be a distraction is a challenge because there's just so many ideas. So the flip side of that, though, is as we've grown and we have a huge number of customer interactions or potential customer interactions, is we've gotten pretty systematic in how we collect that and use it as data. Mm-hmm. So anytime you see somebody post on a comment on an ad or an Instagram post or a YouTube video, or they call or they email, whatever it is, we log all of that in a way that can be organized and filtered. Okay. And we use that to drive product decisions. So I know at any given time how many people have reached out to ask about, a cell phone mount for a 2007 Dodge Ram. Okay. And so we kind of combine those two data sources and make decisions that way.
Okay. That's interesting because we do a very similar thing with the My Shop Assist software where I use a Trello board to track kind of all the like customer requests, and sometimes it's bugs, sometimes it's like just I see things that we need to adjust, but for the most part, literally every single time somebody communicates with me, whether I'm on the phone, whether I'm doing like a tutorial or a demo or whatever it is, I take those requests or things that they think would be cool or whatever, I put them all on the Trello board and I organize them kind of by essentially what type of request it is, and then I kind of match them up. So I'm doing something similar to you where like if one person requests it, and in my head, I have a little bit of intuition because I run a shop as well, so I kind of know, that might not be all that useful to anybody else. So it kind of gets, moved down the like priority list. And then if I get the same request several times or everybody I talk to wants the same thing, then clearly that's like high priority. We move it to the top of the list and get it done when we can do it. I'm guessing that's similar to how you're handling this then.
Yeah, it sounds very similar. Your experience being a shop owner too, it has that like instinct or intuition angle that I think is really important, and it's something that I'm really conscious at Builtright of preserving, because I think when you're having so many touch points with customers now, it can be really easy to just and only create products that are based on what people are asking for. And that would be the safe thing to do. And I think a lot of big businesses do that. And also I think a lot of small businesses that are just sort of following maybe in the footsteps of another business do that and like pick up the scraps. I think a part of what Builtright is as a brand, and a part of what I enjoy as a founder and an inventor, is to create interesting new things. And sometimes those are not things that people are asking for. And sometimes I do that, and it turns out I'm the only person that wanted that.
Right.
but sometimes I do that, and like in the example of our very first product, sometimes I do that, and it really is a solution to a problem that a lot of people have. And so just being careful to preserve that, and for me personally to preserve space, time and space to do that and to allow those things to happen is important. And I think we see in a lot of these bigger brands, certainly once they're acquired by a private equity or a strategic investor, they stop making space for that stuff. And you can see it pretty quickly, actually.
Okay. And you are also, I guess, life cycling out products, right? Like, so like if something isn't selling, do you just cut off the SKU and not make it anymore? When you do, go ahead.
We don't actually. Certainly there are, automotive products for us have sort of a life cycle. And I think part of it is it's not necessarily because the demand's not there, but we're a higher quality, higher end brand. Mm-hmm. And, it's harder for a person that's buying, a 15-year-old truck to justify that accessory purchase. And we understand that. So that being said, part of what this in-house manufacturing allows us to do is, if there's a slower moving SKU, but we can just make 10 or 12 of something and put it on the shelf, we'll just do that. We've already done the hard work, right, of releasing it and documentation and installation. And, if there's a 17-year-old kid out there with an older F-150 that wants Builtright product, I want nothing more for that than for him to be able to buy it and use it. So,
okay. And now when you are manufacturing stuff in-house, you actually do start reaching like limits to how much stuff you can produce. How do you weigh like what products you can make in house to like the market size? I know you were kind of hinting at that earlier on, was like, if we're going to make 10,000 of a product, maybe you don't want to be making it in house, or maybe it's the opposite. The smaller runs you do outsource, but the bigger runs you bring in house. Like, do you kind of like measure the output of your facility in any way?
I would say that that's something that we are working on dialing in right now. We've just started doing in-house manufacturing in the last 6 months. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that we're figuring out. I could concoct some fancy answer for you because I have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. But the truth is we're not quite there. I know that like by the numbers, we have enough work that we could keep twice the equipment that we have busy full time.
Okay.
So the question is not how do we keep our equipment busy? It's how do we balance because on the surface, when you're just buying raw material and you're cutting on a laser or bending it, it can feel like it's less expensive. Uh-huh. But doing those activities in-house and then, sending them out for finishing or whatever, has like a ripple effect on what else can happen in the warehouse. Uh-huh. And so getting really careful about basically the answer to your question. But what we're doing right now is, if sales on a product spike and our manufacturing partners can't react as quickly as we can. Mm-hmm. And so in a case like that, we'll manufacture in-house to fill a gap. When we've got a new product and we don't have any sales data to support a larger initial run, we'll use our equipment to do that and manage risk there. And then, just in cases where there's a smaller run, we can be more profitable and put fewer things on the shelf, which allows us to hold on to cash in a form that is better than parts on the shelf.
Okay. So it's basically a work in progress, then, essentially is what you're saying. Is you understand it is something you are going to have to look into, and you will start. I mean, it's hard to do it on the fly, but like after you've done it for years, it might make a lot more sense on like, dollar per square foot of your warehouse, or I don't know what the metric is for manufacturing space, but I'm sure there's something.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things that's hard is like you can model that out, and I had to justify bringing the equipment in. But our industry is pretty dynamic. We're growing very, very quickly. But you sort of like, it's hard to bank on that growth, or invest in that growth, or invest based on that growth. And so there's a level of risk there to manage, but, yeah, I'm not at all worried that having that capability in-house is not worthwhile.
Okay. And you wanted me to ask you about Amazon. What were you wanting to, are you still selling through Amazon then, or went back to it, or what?
Yeah, so it comes up because I still have this post on LinkedIn that's like gets a lot of views, and people will still reach out to me on it. And we talked direct versus distribution. I think Amazon's kind of somewhere in the middle. But I know when we talked last, my original product had been knocked off on Amazon a bunch of different times, and we were pursuing patents. And actually, the knockoff sellers were actively fighting the grant of our patent. So in the last 5 years, we've had that patent granted along with a handful of other utility patents.
Oh, okay.
And have additional patents pending. So I guess the lesson that I have learned there, that in my case at least, pursuing that IP protection when we have a truly original product or idea has been very, very worthwhile. So we are still selling those few SKUs on Amazon, and we're going to continue to add product to Amazon as we feel it's like appropriate. We don't let other people sell on Amazon. We'll control that ourselves.
Okay.
But Amazon has put systems in place that make it, if you have IP, that make it a little bit easier to sell and protect your brand. And so we're going to continue to use that. It's a good sales channel. It's also just a good way to reach new customers and reach new people and get in front of people that are looking for solutions to problems.
All right. So I want to go into this a lot more now. So you are still selling that original product, which is the latch for the rear seat of the F-150s, right?
Yeah.
Still sell a lot of them, or is it, eventually you're going to reach the end of all the vehicles in the world, right? Or is there just many of them, right?
You would think that, but they're still making F-150s that have this, I guess, a deficiency. And now obviously we've patented the solution, which is kind of nice. Put it this way, that the patent pays for itself almost every day.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
And now, how do you go? So, when you had people knocking you off on Amazon, and you were patent pending, when you receive the patent, do you have any recourse on those guys?
We chose not to try and look back.
Okay.
And really just say, let's see what we can do to get cleaned up now and maintain it like that. I hate having to use our IP and enforce it. That's not what I want to do, especially when it's like a legal solution, which is to cut off sellers or, send nasty letters.
Yeah.
I would like to use our IP to protect our products using business solutions. And what I mean by that is like a licensing arrangement or that type of thing.
Okay.
So one of the things that, if you and I follow up again in 5 years, what I'll tell you about is how we've begun really aggressively enforcing our other utility patents.
Okay.
That is something that so Amazon makes it easy, relatively easy. If there's clear infringement on a patent, you can have your attorney describe in the correct terms how it's infringing. And then Amazon handles it all internally.
Oh, okay.
And then you build kind of a case history. So now if there's a new knockoff of that product, I can have it taken down within hours.
Wow. Okay. So fast. Okay.
That's really great.
Yeah.
But from an IP standpoint, it's not as easy to enforce utility patent against another. Some of them are my friends in the industry.
Yep.
And so there's some difficult conversations to be had there. And I think that there are solutions that are mutually beneficial for everybody. But it's part of the cost of making innovative products and protecting them in a way that allows you to continue doing that is having to have those conversations. So that's something that'll be a big thing, I think, for us in the next few years. Otherwise, you kind of just have to go and make bed racks and tonneau covers and whatever else, because the cost of innovating isn't worth the squeeze.
Okay. And then, so do you have like a legal team then, or is you just have somebody you've been using? Because it sounds like it's going to get to the point where if you have enough products, you are basically going to be licensing stuff and enforcing stuff. It's like you almost need a full-time person doing that, right? Or is it just, can you do that with a non-lawyer person?
No, you definitely need a lawyer or lawyers, or a lawyer with a great team. And that's what we have. We work with Edwin Sisson, Jeffrey Banyas over there, Sisson Banyas, as kind of our quarterback on that stuff. He's a guy that knows the industry very well. He knows a lot of people. He knows the ins and outs. I've worked with, within each region or whatever, where we were top IP firms. And they're nothing compared to somebody that understands, the geometry of a truck bed and can talk and use language and draft patents in such a way that demonstrates that understanding is really, really valuable. So it's expensive. But like I said, that rear seat release product really proved that it's worth the expense if you are patenting something that is really, truly novel and interesting.
Okay.
Not just like I'm not hanging them on my walls here. It's not an ego thing. It's protecting the business type of thing.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody hasn't listened to the last interviews where you talked about that, it's pretty interesting that you were saying you were still a smaller company relative to what you're now, and you said they had basically ripped off $500,000 worth of your product fairly quickly. It was a lot, right? So, and they were doing it all through Amazon, employees knocking off products or knowing Amazon had a system that you could see the best products that they were selling, and yours came up as a small, easy to ship, easy to manufacture product, right? That's kind of how it happened.
Yeah, really. Amazon obviously don't give real sales data, but they rank products and algorithmically there are people and there's software solutions that have figured out how to approximate sales. And being that I'm a seller and I check those platforms, they're pretty accurate. And so that's kind of the danger of selling with Amazon really in our industry, we've seen this with retailers and dealers. I think it's why manufacturers are moving in some cases direct. Is one of the things that you give up when you're selling your product through another person is sales data and product velocity. And here are the hot sellers. Mm-hmm. I've had it happen to me with other dealers where they, they're selling 100 of our antennas a week. And then they say, well, maybe I'll just go make an antenna. So that's really easy on Amazon. And that's what we experienced.
Okay.
So now, I shied away from Amazon. Now Builtright as a brand and our products are out there enough. Yeah. And a person just browsing the forums and Facebook and Instagram can kind of deduce that, this is popular and this is popular and this is popular. So now there are already sort of knockoffs and copycats of some of our other products on Amazon, even though we're not there. So for us to go and start selling some additional SKUs on Amazon isn't really exposing us to any additional risk because it's already happened.
Have you had people build products that work with your product? Not necessarily ripping stuff off, but you build a bed rack. Do people make products that mount to your bed rack for their super niche, fishing rod holder or whatever it may be that somebody wanted?
Yep. Yeah, totally. I think that that's cool. We are obviously building out a range of attachments, but we can't get to all of those ideas and all of those different markets and all of those unique uses. And one of the things that's kind of neat about being, we've been doing it long enough and we were the original in a lot of the types of products that we make. People understand that Builtright's an authority in that area. And so when a smaller business or another industry partner that makes, caps or campers or whatever, they will reach out to us looking for dimensions and this, that, and the other thing, so that to make sure that their products are compatible. Because some of these other higher end brands, they just know, they know that their type of customer is also a Builtright customer. So let's make it easy for them to buy and use both products at once. It's impossible for us to accommodate every other aftermarket product and brand and clamp and this, that, and the other thing. But when there are brands that we are in alignment with, it's really awesome. We worked on some bike mounts and stuff with Freedom Coast, who makes killer bike mounts. And they make some mounts now for our Molly panels that are kind of slick. And yeah, I love doing stuff like that.
And do they usually approach you to make sure that, you know, they're not stepping on your feet? And then do you take those products and list them on your website as like an accessory you can sell as well? Is that something you collaborate with on, or is it just you just strictly stick to your stuff? I know you mentioned earlier was you do sell some like OPP stuff through Mountech, right? But how does that work through Builtright?
Yeah, sometimes they'll approach us and basically kind of look to work together. I think oftentimes it's like maybe it's a market segment or a piece of an industry that is adjacent to ours, but not the same. So like in the Freedom Coast example, you know, those guys are the go-to people for bike mounts, and especially in like the Sprinter van type stuff.
Okay.
And so they came to us and said, hey, let's work together on, you know, a fork mount for your panels. And that was something we were already kind of working on. So we worked with them to design a mount that is specific to, that integrates really nicely with our products. And we brought that to market under the Mountech brand. And we give them credit for it in the description and stuff. So it's not like it's not a secret.
Okay.
But yeah, and kind of tangentially with that, we also do have people, we do some collaborative products. Like we have a great Molly panel solution with Diamondback truck bed covers.
Okay.
So they came to us and said, hey, you know, we have people that are looking for a Molly panel under the bottom of a truck bed cover. You guys are the Molly panel guys. Let's figure something out. And we did that. Have a number of other similar arrangements, most that I can't or shouldn't share details about. But we're approached by OEMs and other manufacturers and stuff that understand this is what we do, and we do it pretty well.
Okay.
So that's kind of an additional sales channel that's obviously you're not going to see that on our website.
Awesome.
But, we love those kind of partnerships.
Awesome. I mean, it just goes to show how big you've grown this thing, where you have like all these other manufacturers coming at you and wanting to work with you, or, you know, hey, let's do this product together or whatever it may be. So that's pretty impressive. Do you have last time you didn't really have a business plan in place, but you kind of knew the direction things were going. Have you done anything with a business plan, and do you have a plan moving forward now?
Yeah, I think, yes, definitely. I recall that conversation with us, and I remember listening to that podcast after we recorded, and I was like, this guy doesn't have a business plan? And I wasn't wrong. So that's one of the things that I've really, I think, accomplished in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, obviously we've grown, and that's an easy thing to point to from a revenue standpoint. But I think it's really having this team. You know, part of what I think about is I don't want Matt Beenen. I don't want to be Builtright. I don't want Builtright to be me. I want to have it be its own living, breathing thing. And obviously, like when a founder starts a business, there's a lot of my DNA in the company, and we work hard to preserve that because it's what's gotten us to this point. But we also understand that it needs to grow past me. So we have a very, very clear, we started using EOS. I enjoy it. If you've read the book Traction, it's that system. I met somebody that's just awesome locally here through an entrepreneurs group that I'm in, and she's our implementer. So she runs our quarterly and annual meetings and helps. She's a really like seasoned entrepreneur. And so, like, for example, if you were to walk in the front door right now and you were to ask any employee, what does Builtright look like in 8 or 10 years? They will all give you exactly the same answer. And there's a lot that goes into that, but to have an entire team that's working towards the same North Star is incredibly powerful. And I think something maybe that I used to take for granted. And I was like, yeah, Beenen's got a plan. But now it's like everybody knows what we're doing, and they know what it looks like in 8 years. So they know where we have to be in 3 years to know that we're on track for that. And we set 1 year and quarterly goals that map to that. So we are incredibly intentional. Part of that is, it's a huge investment to operate like that and to bring consultants and coaches and other seasoned people in. One of the things I'm conscious of is the fact that this is all uncharted territory for me. I've not run a business this big, and we're moving too fast to learn all of our lessons the hard way. Okay. So there's a ton of value in bringing in other seasoned people and getting other kind of insights. Sure. But also it's an investment. I mentioned my leadership team. It's not inexpensive to go and build a leadership team that you think can get a business to 40, 60, 80, $100 million. So if you're going to make that investment, making sure that those people are working on the right things every day is a really important part of it. And having a business plan obviously is a precursor to all of that. So I know that was a really long answer. It's something that I've like really spent a lot of time working on in the last few years. So I'm passionate about it, but yeah, definitely have a plan.
Okay. And then expanding on some of this that you just talked about, you said you do quarterly meetings. That is not just a leadership meeting, it sounded like. You bring all hands on deck sort of meeting, so like everybody's involved in it?
Yes and no is the answer to that. So actually what we'll do, and we actually just did this for Q3, the whole leadership team will come into town because our director of sales, our customer service manager, and our CMO are all remote. Mm-hmm. They will come into town and we'll do a one-day off-site meeting with just the leadership team. And that is where we review what we did in the last quarter, review our longer-term goals, set goals for the next quarter, and kind of get a good clean slate for the quarter. And then in the week or week and a half following that, we will have an all-hands meeting where we basically share the output of all that. Here's how we did last quarter. Here are our goals. Here's what we're going to do this next quarter. Let's get to it. So everybody in the business has a lot of visibility there.
Okay. And then following up on that, when you try to, I guess, like encourage your employees and to keep them, wanting and motivated to move forward with everything, like, how are you compensating them? Do you pay them all pretty well? Are you doing like employee stock? I'm guessing you are the sole owner of everything still, right? Is that the case?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So then how are you compensating them well? What are you doing to motivate the people?
Yeah, I think it's there's obviously no one silver bullet there. We do compensate well. I mean, there are people in Builtright that'll make more than me this year. Okay. And I think that's not necessarily inappropriate. For me, a lot of what I get out of it is obviously there's longer term enterprise value and also some freedom and flexibility. So compensation wise, we're definitely competitive. I think it's just also we try to provide a great place to work. I know everybody says that, and it doesn't mean that we have like a ping pong table, and we do occasionally have a pizza party. But we're like really clear on our culture and our core values. Mm-hmm. And that means something different for us than it does, I think, for a lot of businesses. The wrong type of person at Builtright hates it here. And we've had that happen, and they leave, and that's okay. Okay. The right type of person loves it. And those are the people that are hungry and they want to grow and they want to learn. They're okay with a fast-paced environment where you might be doing something a little bit different every day. They see that there's opportunity, and it's not always opportunity that's in focus, right? Because we're growing. So your next step may not be really clear, but they see other people growing within the business. And then the accountability piece of it. So again, I know I mentioned earlier, we're high on accountability. Everybody knows how everybody's doing from week to week to week. And high-performing people love that. And so that's worked really well for us.
And have you done, I'm guessing you're doing benefits and, retirement. Some of the stuff is like very rare, at least in the install level and like installer shops. But when you're manufacturing, I feel like when you're making your own product, your margins are better enough to, offer those things to people, right?
Yeah. Kind of just building on my last answer, I have seen both with previous business and with Builtright, the value in having the right people. Mm-hmm. And those right people have a lot of other options when it comes to where they want to work and what they want to do with their time. Yep. And so really being as competitive as possible. I mean, it's difficult in our industry because an engineer can go make a ton of money, at Lockheed Martin.
SpaceX or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Those are different types of people, and those are different types of jobs. To answer the benefits question, we have healthcare reimbursement. We have matching 401k, the usual stuff. So I want a guy or a gal that's got a family and has a bunch of experience in the industry and would be a huge asset to the team to see Builtright as a viable option. And I think a lot of businesses, and I used to be guilty of this, I really try not to be, a lot of businesses will use the small business excuse. And it's really difficult. And I know that, especially for shops and stuff, it's difficult to be competitive. but I've also seen the flip side of it where it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So that's the way that I look at it.
Okay. And the last question I have related to the business here is exit strategy. I mean, this thing has grown a bunch, and I feel like you could just like unload it to somebody who is like a major manufacturer, and you could go retire on your catamaran and sail around the Mediterranean like Trey Cobb has been doing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
When is it going to happen? Never?
It's funny. It's the bigger the business has gotten, people ask me that, or feel more free to ask me that question more frequently. I think part of it too is what we see in the industry, and I know it's been, if you're in this industry, you've seen it in the last 5 years, especially. Sure. But I have no plans to sell. Like I talked about, I've got this kind of crystal clear vision for what I think Builtright can be. I set a 10-year goal 2 years ago now, so 8 years from now. Like you said, just to be transparent, like anybody in my position could either take their foot off the gas from a growth standpoint and use the cash flow of the business to live pretty comfortably rather than grow and provide opportunities for more people. Or like you said, probably sell the business and find a way to spend my time. But that's neither of those things sound like more fun to me than showing up and getting to do what I do every day, frankly. There are days where the catamaran sounds nice. But I've also like been on a catamaran and it's like cool for a day. You know what I mean? So
you're ruining it for me, man, because that was my retirement.
Listen, it's just me. And obviously it works well for some people. So like, I think there's just nothing else I would rather do. And I think one of the things too is, and I know I talked about this last time, is my attention span. And what we've seen with like Mountech and our ability we acquired another little brand and roll it into Mountech is like, that satisfies my desire to have kind of different, changing, interesting, new things, my shiny objects, without polluting what Builtright is and what I know it can become. We've seen what the wrong, private equity partners or whatever can do to brands in our business. Yep. I think it's worth mentioning that there are really, really great ones that have done a nice job with some of those brands, but in the wrong hands. And as a founder, I might have control over that first step, but not the second. It's really hard to watch them destroy brands and legacies. I don't really have an ego about it. Like, it's not Beenen Industries or anything like that. But I care deeply about the people.
You don't want somebody to take over and sink your ship, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I know, just like nobody wants to watch that happen, I don't think. So that's something it is, as I think about the longer term future and our trajectory right now, I do understand that there's a chance that I'm not the right person to be running, an $80 million business. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Or maybe if I am, that's not the job that I want.
Okay.
I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old right now. And I really value work-life balance. Yeah. And when I say work-life balance, I don't necessarily mean I'm only working 40 hours a week, but I get to pick the, 60 or 70 hours. And so that's really valuable to me as well.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, is like, being the owner of something means when you have to get something done, you're gone. You have to go do it. But at the same time, I have not missed a single one of my kids' soccer games, and she's 10. I've missed 0 of them. And it's because I get to choose when I want to go to work and when I don't want to work. So I schedule cars. I never schedule stuff on Saturdays anymore. In fact, it's nice to be able to do that, and you can't do that when you are a salary or an employee of another bigger company. That when something is going down, you don't get the choice of sitting it out. You have to be there for it, and you're at the whim of your manager essentially.
Yeah, it's totally a trade-off, and it's I know I went kind of deep on the leadership team thing and the structure thing, but the realization that I have had, and I've seen other people do this right, and I've seen people do this wrong, or maybe not right and wrong, is maybe those aren't the right terms, but in a way that is in alignment with what I want, and in a way that's not. You can build a business to the size that Builtright is now, and even further by like really just grinding hard And I think then I know this because I've talked to some of these people, it starts to feel like a trap. And what I would rather do is build kind of a nice machine where, I don't need to be a super critical part of it. And I think that allows me as the founder and CEO to maintain a level of healthy stress that makes it a viable long-term thing rather than, like I'm driving a car at 1,000 miles an hour into a wall type of situation. So
yeah.
I'm conscious.
My takeaway from all this is, and this is going to be an ongoing theme with the reboot of this podcast in general, is that, like in my own case here, I've got two businesses. I've got Evolution Dynamics and I've got my Shop Assist. Evolution Dynamics is a very labor-intensive, non-scalable, niche installation shop. Tuning, building engines, that sort of stuff. And I have learned, and it took me way too long to learn this, is I own a job, really. I mean, like, I get to do the things where if I don't want to work on Saturday or don't want to work on Monday, I can do that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I am constantly, always having to be here. And it is practically impossible to hire someone into the role that I've made myself. In fact, I would say it is impossible to hire somebody into that. I can hire technicians, but finding somebody to tune, then what happens is they learn how to tune cars, and then they realize they can make 3 times as much money doing it themselves until they start the business, and then they don't make anything, right? So it's kind of like it's a hole that I've dug myself into, and I am working actively to change how the business is run, so that way it doesn't require me, and so that way I can actually, and my end goal here is to actually unload the shop so I can focus on the software company, which I actually still have a lot of passion for. I haven't ground myself into the ground yet with that one, and seeing what you have done and still having the passion for what your business is inspires me to keep pushing forward with growing the software, looking for new avenues on how to sell the product, which is the biggest struggle I have. I think the product is absolutely fantastic. And when I see shops look at the product and not even know about the product, it frustrates me because that's a failing on my part, not educating people and not showing people. And I'm missing all that because I'm working on cars all the time, right? So, it's like learning how to grow a business is hard, and you have successfully done it, and I want to thank you for taking the time and kind of sharing tips and tricks and secrets and what you look for to make that happen. And hopefully I can kind of take some of this information you've shared and apply it to my situation. And like I said, I'm going to be covering more of that in future podcasts, so that way people can kind of follow along with me fixing my fuck ups and actually, growing the business the way it should have been from the beginning. I kind of took my eye off the ball and have dropped it and trying to have to redo everything again, essentially. So,
well, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said before, this is a really fun way to kind of look back and reflect on stuff. It's also, one of the things I've learned is one of the most fulfilling parts of what I do is getting to help other people in their journey, whether that's an employee or another entrepreneur who is maybe just a couple steps behind me. It's really fun to help other people find their passion and their place. I feel so grateful that I've done that, and I enjoy what I do, and I know that that's available for other people. So that's an open offer to you. Call me anytime. Let's chat. And I'd love to help you fix those fuck ups and tell you about my most recent fuck ups. So.
Okay, good. Let's do it. Okay, so let's end this off. How do we connect with your company? How do people get a hold of you? How do people order your products? Tell us your channels and how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, certainly. Builtright.com if you want to buy from us direct. If you got a local shop and they're buying through Turn 14, Keystone, any of the AAM distributors, they have access to our products now. If they don't, please feel free to put them in touch. My email is matt@builtrightind.com. Love to chat with anybody. So,
all right. Well, Thanks again, Matt, for taking the time to do this, and good luck at SEMA. Oh, I guess I should also say you're going to be at SEMA. You have a booth. Where is that going to be located?
Yes, we have a booth. We're in the West Hall. I won't bother with a booth number because A, I'm not positive of the booth number, but also B, I know it's not super helpful day of. We're towards the front of the hall as you walk back in past Real Truck.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app, tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.